Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to another Reddit Stories video, and today we're going to be getting into some true stories from Reddit. Perfect to listen to if you're studying, sleeping, or like I do, at work. But thank you for stopping by. Before we get into this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Helps out the channel a lot, and would like to see what we can accomplish in 2025. Anyways, let's get into true scary stories from Reddit. You think you're safe in your own home. Last summer, I came home to visit my parents and siblings. I usually spend my summers working for my university's housing, so I was really eager to get away from all that and spend a relaxing few months at home. My parents' house is in a decent neighborhood. Never had there been an instance of burglary or home invasions. It was pretty quiet suburbia. I would even venture to say boring on some accounts. Anyways, last summer the air conditioning was broken at our house, and my dad was going to have a repairman come by and check it out at around 2 p.m., and he would leave work early to meet him. My mom and my sisters were off to work and school, so I was at the house by myself. My room was upstairs. I took a nap and woke up to the sound of the door slamming at around 1:30. I didn't think anything of it because I thought it was my dad meeting the repairman a little early. I decided I'd go and join them to see what the damage was. I was eager to get the AC back because summers in Texas are awful. When I got to the second floor landing, I noticed something was off right away. It was dead silent. I heard my dad's gun cabinet open, place where he kept his most prized guns. I thought it was strange, but my dad did love to chat and show off things. Honestly, I had no clue what was going on. And then my cell phone rang in the bathroom, next to my room. I was keeping it there to charge because the outlet in my room was broken. It was my dad. He was calling to tell me that the repairman was coming at 3 instead of 2. Now, I've read where people talking about going cold all over when they're afraid, but at that exact moment, I felt like I was about to throw up. I was so scared because whoever was downstairs was not my dad, and it apparently wasn't the repairman. I locked myself in the bathroom and told him what was going on. He promptly told me to call the police. I did. The operator stayed on the line with me and said the officers that would arrive had a safe word they would tell me to assure it was actually them. I sat in the dark bathroom for what seemed like ages, my heart racing. Finally, there was a soft knock on the door. The man said it was the police and gave me the safe word, and I quickly ran out to meet them, almost hyperventilating. And in a flash, all of the police officers were training their guns on me. I held my hands up freaking out, but they ushered me away from the door quickly. I didn't have time to ask questions because the officers turned on the bathroom light. Standing in the bathtub was a man, dressed in all black, clutching a knife. He was staring right at me. He was there the entire time. There's a woman in my shower, but I live alone. It started innocently enough. I came home from work late last night, exhausted, to find the bathroom light on. I hadn't left it on. I'm meticulous about turning off lights to save on the electric bill. But I brushed it off, thinking maybe I'd just forgotten in my rush to leave that morning. I didn't notice it at first. I didn't notice her. The sound of the shower running woke me up at 2 a.m. At first I thought it was the pipes. My apartment is old, and the strange noises are part of the charm. Or the landlord says. But when I got up to check, I saw steam pulling out from underneath the bathroom door. I froze. I live alone. The door handle was warm to the touch. I hesitated. Every nerve in my body screaming for me to run, but curiosity, or maybe stupidity, got the better of me. I pushed the door open. The mirror was fogged over, and water streamed down the shower curtain. For a second, I was ready to laugh it off. Maybe I'd turned the shower on accidentally earlier in the night. Maybe. Then I saw the shadow, a figure behind the curtain, silhouetted by the bathroom's faint yellow light. "Who's there?" My voice cracked, sounding far less intimidating than I hoped. The shadow didn't move. It just stood there, watching me, or waiting. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a bottle of shampoo, and yanked the curtain open. The shower was empty. The water was still running, pouring down on the spotless porcelain, but there was no one inside. Heart pounding, I turned off the water, shaking so hard I could barely grip the handle. When I looked up, the mirror was still foggy, except for one spot. 4 words were scrawled there, written in the steam. "Why did you look?" I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the bath mat. I hadn't noticed before, but the air in the bathroom felt wrong, heavy, oppressive, like the moment before a thunderstorm. My instincts screamed at me to leave. I bolted out the bathroom and locked the door behind me. Though I wasn't sure what good it would do, my hands were trembling so much that I dropped my phone twice before I could dial the police. The dispatcher sounded calm, almost bored, as I explained that someone had broken into my apartment. "Stay on the line," she said, but her voice faded into static. Then I heard it. The shower turned on again. This time, the sound was different. It wasn't just water. It was humming. a soft, melodic tune, eerily cheerful, coming from behind the locked bathroom door. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen. My mind raced as I backed toward the front door, my eyes glued to the bathroom, but as I reached for the knob, a thought stopped me cold. What if it was already outside? The humming stopped, and then from the other side of the door came a knock, soft at first, then louder. "Come back," a voice whispered. It sounded distorted, like it wasn't quite human. I did what any sane person would do. I ran. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. I didn't even lock the apartment door behind me. When the police arrived, they found no signs of forced entry. My bathroom was dry, the mirror spotless. They chalked it up to stress and vivid imagination. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. I've been staying in a motel since, trying to convince myself it's over. But last night I woke up to the sound of water dripping. There was steam on the motel mirror, and written in the condensation were the same 4 words. "Why did you look?" This time there was something else beneath it. "You can't hide." Whatever's stalking my cabin is leaving me warnings. Audio log 1, first signs. This is Nathan Cole. Log number 1, I guess. January 9th, time is 2100 hours, give or take. Been here for about a month now. Cabin's holding up better than I thought. Old as hell, but it keeps the heat in. Got snow again last night. Forest is dead quiet. Kind of eerie, but better than the noise I left behind. No big thoughts tonight, just trying to make this a habit. End log. I didn't start recording because I thought anything strange would happen out here. The logs were supposed to be a therapy, a way to organize my thoughts after everything. I didn't like journaling, hated staring at the mess in my handwriting, so I bought this ancient tape recorder at a second-hand shop on the way to the cabin. The guy at the counter had laughed, told me no one used tapes anymore, but I liked the tactile feel of it. Plus the recorder didn't connect to the internet, didn't buzz or beep, just worked. Out here, that's all I needed. Silence, simplicity, and the time to pull my head together. But the first night it snowed. I started noticing things. At first I thought I was imagining it, like my brain hadn't adjusted to the quiet yet. But it wasn't just my nerves. The tracks were the first thing I couldn't explain. Audio log 2. Tracks. This is Nathan Cole. Log number 2. January 10th, time is 0700 hours. Snow fell overnight. Woke up early to shovel the path and, well, there's something weird. Tracks. Big ones. Too big to be human. I don't know what made them, but it walked upright. Bipedal. Definitely not a bear. Front paws don't land like this. I'd guess 7-8 feet between strides. I followed them for a bit into the tree line. They stopped about 50 yards in, just stopped, like whatever made them disappeared, vanished. The snow is fresh, no signs of doubling back, no branches broken overhead, nothing. I'm not saying it's anything crazy. Could have been a bear rearing up, or maybe a big-ass moose, I don't know. Anyway, end log. The tracks circled the cabin first. That's what unnerved me. They didn't just pass by. They were deliberate, cutting a wide perimeter before heading off into the woods. I'd heard animals do that sometimes, especially predators checking the area before moving on. But what animal walked like that? The claws left gouges in the snow, long and hooked, but the prints themselves were humanoid. 5 toes, a wide heel. I don't want to be paranoid, so I chalked it up to inexperience. I wasn't a biologist or a hunter. I didn't know how snow disoriented tracks, but that didn't explain why the trail just ended. No signs of digging, no holes in the snow. It was like something had plucked the creature out of thin air and it carried it off. I spent the day inside after that, trying to shake the unease. Audio log 3, the smell. Log number 3, January 11th. Time is 2300 hours. Something's wrong out here. It's the smell. I noticed it this morning, right after I stepped outside. Rot, like a dead animal, but sharper, almost metallic. I checked around the property. Nothing. No carcasses, no trash I'd forgotten to burn. It's strongest near the tree line, though I'd thought about following it, but I don't know. Feels wrong. Feels like something doesn't want me to. Anyway, the tracks were back tonight, same as before, circling the cabin. I swear they're closer this time, about 30 feet from the door. I'm not imagining that. I boarded up the windows. Feels ridiculous, but I don't like the idea of something watching me. I'll check the woods tomorrow if the snow holds. End log. That night, I didn't sleep. Every creak of the cabin, every gust of wind made me sit up and reach for the rifle I kept near the bed. I didn't see anything, but the smell was worse. Leaking through the cracks in the walls, it wasn't just rot anymore, it was damp, earthy, like soil had been turned over in a grave. I waited until sunrise before stepping outside. The tracks were there, just like I thought, tighter around the cabin, more deliberate. I followed them into the edge of the woods, where they vanished again. But this time, I found something else. A tuft or something snagged on a branch, a strip of flesh. It looked like skin, but pale and waxy, almost translucent. When I touched it, it crumbled between my fingers, brittle like dried leaves. I didn't follow the tracks any further. Something told me not to. Audio log 5, the artifact. Log 5, January 13th. Time is, I don't know, middle of the night. I was going to skip recording tonight, but I need to get this down. Something's wrong, really wrong. I found something by the door. It wasn't there an hour ago. A bone? Looks like a deer femur, but it's been carved. There's patterns all over it. Spirals, lines, shapes. I don't recognize it. Doesn't look old. Whatever it left, it wanted me to find it. The tracks are closer again. 20 feet, maybe less. They're not circling anymore. They're leading straight to my door. The worst crime scene of my career. I've been a police officer in a small town for about 15 years. It's not a big city, so most of the calls we get are about neighbor disputes, speeding, or occasionally about burglaries. Nothing too heavy, but this night was something different. That night, I was on duty with a colleague when we got a call about persistent nighttime noise. A woman complained about muffled screams and loud sounds coming from a neighboring house, almost every night for a week. A routine noise complaint, but repeated enough to warrant attention. I volunteered to go alone. My partner was covering another area, and it sounded simple enough. The house in question was on a quiet residential street, well lit and unassuming. A modest home with an overgrown garden. The windows were closed, and not a single curtain covered the panes. Everything inside was dark. I approached and knocked on the door once, twice, nothing. I was about to head back to my car when the door suddenly swung open. A man stood there, shirtless, his hair disheveled and his face slick with sweat. He stared at me with wild, feverish eyes. He looked to be in his 40s, wiry but tense, like a coiled spring. Dark stains covered his chest and arms, irregular and some still wet. "Good evening, sir. I'm here responding to a noise complaint." I began calmly, trying not to react to his disheveled appearance. "Is everything all right?" He didn't answer at first, just stared at me. His lips quivered slightly, and his eyes darted past me as if he was expecting someone else to show up. "There's no noise here," he finally said, his voice raspy and uneven. I couldn't help but notice the stains on his body. They weren't just sweat, they were darker, missier. I had to ask, "Are you injured? There's stuff on you. It looks like blood." He glanced down at his chest, then let out a dry, nervous laugh. "No, nothing, you should leave." His tone shifted abruptly, from hesitant to aggressive. I took a step forward to get a better look at him, and he stepped back quickly, trying to close the door. I blocked it with my foot. "Wait a second, I need to ask you a few questions. If everything's fine, I'll be on my way." "There's nothing here. Get out," he suddenly shouted, slamming the door harder. The force made me step back, and before I could react, he turned and bolted inside the house, disappearing down a hallway. I started after him, but stopped at the threshold. Instead, I called for backup. Dispatch confirmed a unit would arrive in about 10 minutes. In the meantime, I decided to stay at the door, hoping the man would calm down or come back, but something felt wrong. The air in the house was heavy, thick with a acidic smell I couldn't quite place. It wasn't just stale, it was deeper, more organic. I shined my flashlight on the hallway and took a tentative step inside. The walls were dirty, scratched in some places. A few dusty frames with faded photos hung crookedly, and somewhere deeper in the house I could hear faint noises, whispers or low, muffled groans. I reached what looked like the living room, then things took a dark turn. In the center of the room was a wooden chair with straps attached to the armrest and back. The floor was covered in old newspapers, soaked with what looked like dried blood. On a small coffee table sat an array of tools, knives, pliers, and other implements, all rusted or stained, and the smell. It was overwhelming now, a putrid mix of decay and iron. Behind me I heard a creak. I spun around and there he was, standing in a doorway. He held something metallic in his hand, something heavy. No, you shouldn't have come inside," he muttered. I drew my weapon and ordered him to drop whatever he was holding. He didn't. Instead he smiled, a twisted, deranged grin. Then he threw the object toward me and darted around another hallway, disappearing through a door I hadn't noticed before. I chased after him, my pulse pounding in my ears. I couldn't let him escape, but every instinct screamed at me to turn around and wait for backup. Still, something drove me forward. The door led to a staircase, descending into the basement. The wooden steps creaked under my weight as I descended. My flashlight flickered slightly, or maybe it was just my shaking hand. The basement was a nightmare. It wasn't large, but every inch of it was used for something horrifying. Meat hooks hung from the ceiling, some still occupied by, I don't even want to describe it. A table held a pile of clothing, likely belonging to the victims. And in the corner was a cage. Inside was a woman, curled up and trembling. Her eyes were wide open but lifeless, like all hope had drained from her. That's when I realized the truth. This wasn't his first time. This man was a predator, a monster in human form. And this house was just his latest stage. When backup finally arrived, he was gone. We searched the house, the neighborhood, but as if he had just vanished into thin air. Investigators later discovered that the house didn't even belong to him. It belonged to a family that had been missing for 2 months. Their fate remains a mystery. To this day, I can't forget his face, or the smell of that basement. But what haunts me most is the thought that he's still out there, somewhere, ready to start again. And that this house was just one of many. A skinwalker has been stalking me. I live in Minnesota. Not a lot of interesting things happen here. I'm aware that I'm not supposed to talk about this, but I need to get this out so others know what to do if one of these creatures ever starts hunting them. It happened around last March. I was behind my house where a small playground is located. It was around 9 p.m. and I was bored, so I was on the swing for around an hour listening to music. After a while, I got off the swing and looked behind me. I saw something across the field and under the trail light. It was tall, way too tall, around 8 feet tall. After I went to the light the next day and measured it, even though this thing was far, far away from me, like around 70 feet away, I could see it clearly. Its skin was disgustingly pale and was far, way too far tight, ripping at the joints and squeezing onto the body. Its smile. It was a real one. It was trying to imitate a smile. It was twisted and sickening, the teeth a mix of animal and human. Way too many to fit in its mouth. I could barely see its eyes. I couldn't tell what color they were, but they were glowing from the trail light. I immediately teared up once I processed what this thing was. I refused to look away from it. I slowly backed up, keeping my eyes on it. I slowly opened the gate to my backyard and shut it as quietly as possible. I slowly walked up to my steps to the back door and didn't look away until the back door was shut and locked. I quickly went to my mother's room to just hang out with her and calm down, but I didn't tell her about what I saw. She doesn't believe in these creatures. Later that night, I was on the phone with my friends when I heard tapping on my window. It was a rhythmic sound, not random like a bird or a bush hitting it. I immediately started crying. This was before I knew what to do. I quickly told my friends what was happening as the tapping moved from the window to the wall beside the window. My bedroom is in the basement, so my window's against the ground. My cat immediately went to the wall where the tapping was and wouldn't get away from it. I called my stepdad, crying that there was someone outside my window. I refused to look through. I was so terrified. My stepdad quickly went outside to see who the hell was outside and making me so terrified. When he came back, he told me there was nothing, and that my imagination was probably playing tricks on me. I didn't sleep that night. After a few weeks, I was at my biological dad's house, told him what happened, and he immediately became terrified for me. He understands these creatures all too well. He told me what to do, and what not to do if they try to get me. Once I was back home, I was on the phone again. It was around 11 at night, and I went upstairs to feed my cat. I then looked outside and saw something. A deer. I watched it for a moment before realizing it wasn't a deer. It was the thing, wearing a deer's skin. It was melted onto its body and covered in blood. I couldn't see the pale arms under the hooves blending in with the snow. I panicked and told my friends what was happening. I ran into my bathroom and locked myself inside. I called my dad and told him what happened. He quickly told me to yell, "In the name of Christ, I command you to stop." And he explained to me that Christ was a command and a kind of power, not a person. Me and my father are agnostic, so this makes sense to us. I screamed and cried, "In the name of Christ, I command you to stop." I stayed in there for an hour while my boyfriend tried to calm me down on the phone. My dad had gone to the woods and screamed into them at the creature demanding it to leave us alone. After an hour, my boyfriend convinced me that I was safe. And the best way to protect myself from these things, I eventually went back to my room and fell asleep while drawing. I haven't had another experience with it yet, but since I've talked about it, I'm sure I'll unfortunately see it soon. And alright guys, that's going to wrap up today's video. Kind of a shorter one for my first video, but hope you enjoyed these stories as much as I did. Comment which one was your favorite and what you would like to see in the future. Anyways, thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. See you next time.